Last?
Yeah, as long as this thing doesn't turn off on me, but it's not going to, so I'm not going to jinx myself.
Alrighty. Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about tuberculosis. I'm going to just throw out a statistics out there to show you how prevalent it is still in our society. Did you know that 10 to 20% of Americans test positive for tuberculosis on a daily basis? That's a pretty high number for something that people don't consider to be a danger in our day and age. Tuberculosis is a pretty dangerous disease that most people don't realize is still very prevalent in our society. Not as much in our country, but other countries it is very prevalent. I would like to say that I can speak about this disease because I worked at, or I volunteered at A.G. Hawley State Hospital, which was in Lantana, a hospital that specialized in treating patients with tuberculosis. My mother worked there. That's how I started volunteering. I have 500 hours under my belt of volunteering there, and I attended seminars and shadowed doctors and helped patients, so I feel like I have enough knowledge to speak about the subject. Tuberculosis is thought to be a disease that's eradicated at the time, but in reality, I think people need more information on how easily it can be contracted, how much of an epidemic it is still to this day and age, and how the disease can affect so many individuals and in a large-scale society. So first off, I'm going to speak to you guys about how you can contract tuberculosis. Most people aren't aware of the signs, and that causes problems because you know, you could be in a room with a person with tuberculosis and not know it, so you can catch it. So signs of people with tuberculosis would be people coughing, especially if they're coughing up blood or thick mucus-like sputum. If they have night sweats, that's more of if you have a family member. They lose weight very rapidly. I saw patients who lost 50 pounds within a month, which is a pretty severe amount of weight to lose. There is also very high fevers that causes the night sweats. Overall, these signs are very important to know because it will lead you to be able to prevent getting sick. It's not that easy to catch if you do prevent. Good ways to prevent is washing your hands, making sure you know the signs, avoiding risky areas such as homeless people, people with low incomes, going out of the country. Obviously, you can't avoid these things, but the best thing to do is take precautions if you do go into those situations, such as getting tested as often as possible. Obviously, you can't get tested all the time, but, you know, whatever the required regimen is. Prevention is really the key to not catching this disease, and catching it at an early stage is very substantial to making sure that you don't get sick. People with weak immune systems, such as having HIV, hepatitis, or other severe diseases like this, have a bigger chance of catching this disease. Most of the patients that I worked with at A.G. Hawley had other diseases like this, like HIV, AIDS, hepatitis, which caused them to contract it. They also contracted it in many other ways, such as being homeless, drug abuse, so they shared needles, so on and so forth. So I'm going to show you a little bit of what tuberculosis does to your lungs. It is a bit of a gruesome picture. First off, I have just a clip art, which isn't too bad, but then I am going to show you one that is more gruesome. So first off, I have this picture. This top picture over here shows you a little white dot. That's the tuberculosis starting off. And then this other picture shows you the microbes eating away at the lung tissue. And this one's full-blown, so therefore it's already made large holes. This causes problems for breathing, and eventually usually is the cause of patient's deaths. This is a realistic picture of what that looks like. As you can see up here, there is missing lung tissue, and there are smaller areas throughout. So I'm going to talk about the current epidemic of the other countries that we have, or other countries such as Africa and Asia, who have a very high tuberculosis rate. I've read from the CDC that about 1 in 4 people can actually have tuberculosis in a lot of these countries. Continents also. I meant continents. Oops. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this documentary I saw on PBS, which through Frontline, which is one of my favorite TV series to follow. You should definitely follow it. And it followed various villages throughout Africa and them having tuberculosis, and how easily people spread it because they didn't have the medical attention needed. They didn't have the drugs needed to treat it. They also didn't know how it was spread, so they would stay in the same villages with people who were infected and interact with them on a daily basis. So therefore, they were getting more people were contracting the disease and having a larger mortality rate. This was kind of a sad documentary to watch, but it was a big eye-opener to see that so many people died of something that's actually pretty easily treatable with the right medicines, which is a cocktail of different antibiotics. I'm also going to go a little bit closer to us. In 2012, in northern Florida, there was actually a big tuberculosis outbreak. About 3,000 people were thought to have tuberculosis, which, yes, in comparison to the total population in Florida, is not that big, but with a disease that's so easily transmittable, if the person doesn't know they have it or other people don't know they have it, it was kind of a big deal. Unfortunately, this happened shortly after our governor, Charlie Crist, decided to close down A.G. Hawley State Hospital because he thought that there was no need for a hospital who treated and eradicated disease, which we obviously don't know it's not true. In reality, tuberculosis has been around pretty much since mankind has been around. It has been found also in a lot of different animals, such as bison. During 460 BC, tuberculosis was thought to be the largest disease to be killing people and just overall infecting people, which is kind of scary, and it also has reoccurred in pandemics very often. At the end of the 19th century and the 20th century, we also had a big outbreak because of the urbanization of different countries, which caused major panic throughout many countries because so many people were dying. It was said that 1 in 4 deaths in the whole world was considered to be tuberculosis to the death. Overall, this disease is very dangerous, and it affects on a larger scale very often, but also it hits home with a lot of people. Patients have families. Patients suffer a lot going through this. They need that support. They need the help. They have to constantly take medicines that make them feel very sick. The disease makes them feel sick. I personally had a tough time at first working at AG or volunteering at AG Hawley because I saw patients so debilitated. But it was really nice to see that in a couple months, within a 6 to 18 month treatment, they started feeling better and they were able to go back to their regular lives, especially since the hospital helped them find jobs, find housing, so on and so forth. This disease is also something that if it's not caught in time and it starts spreading, it's not a good thing because it's very hard to contain. Most people aren't aware of the signs, as now you guys are, which is a great thing. On the last subject I'm going to talk about is something called multiple drug resistance, which is another topic that I thought about doing my informative speech on, but I just decided against it. Is actually what multiple drug resistance means is the disease creates a resistance to a specific drug. So in terms of tuberculosis, the tuberculosis bacterium becomes resistant to different antibiotics, making it harder for doctors to treat it because there's only like a certain amount of antibiotics they can use. I actually knew a patient at A.G. Hawley who had pretty much become resistant to all antibiotics, and they actually had to bring in a FDA unapproved antibiotic just to see if it would work, because if not, he was going to die. And it actually did work, which is great for him. This is actually a really big problem in the medical community, so something to also watch out for. Just being in hospitals, hospitals have this a lot nowadays, and it's very scary. Um, Knowing how the disease is contracted is important, but overall, you just should just be aware of it in general. I just ask for you guys to keep an eye out because, yes, it's not that prevalent in our country, but it is important to not catch it if possible because you never know if you'll be in a situation where somebody around you might have it. Um, yes, it is thought to be eradicated, but in reality, it is out there, and just as much as we say, we're not going to get hit by a bus tomorrow, you never really know. So it's good to be aware. I'm going to finish off by stating a quote by Dr. Merman, who's the director of the National Center for HIV/AIDS, Viral Hepatitis, STD, and TB Prevention. He said, TB can happen anywhere, in any community. Exposure can happen in the school, at work, at home, while traveling, or anywhere that people are close to contact with one another. This is why TB prevention is a public health priority for the nation. Thank you.
Well, that was really nice.